Hey, what's up, guys? This is Sam, and I'll be doing the free video for October 1st, 2021. So, another week in the books. Pretty volatile week, mostly to the downside, a little bit to the upside today. At the end of the day, the week ended up closing lower, and you can see it over here on the left. Big volatile week, huge volume, increasing volume, might I add. And it did close below basically last week's open, actually. So kind of a interesting way to start the video because I'm actually going to tell you that things are actually aligned here for a bounce going into next week. It could be a pretty substantial bounce as well. I'm going to show you the levels here that I'm looking for in the SPY specifically, and then you could translate that over to whatever you wish to trade. I'm going to show you the SPY, but I think the market in general is going to bounce. Not for any particularly good reason. The charts are pretty busted, like we've been talking about in these videos and in the premium videos. All of the risk signals that I have pointed out, I think it was 2 weeks ago. If you go back and you look at the archives for simpler trading here on YouTube, the videos that I've made, if you go back and you look at one called Machine Head, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I showed you what I call the trifecta of risk, which is VIX, bonds, and dollar. And they certainly have all hit all three at once, and in doing so, they have caused a lot of damage to the charts. But I do think you can bounce. So why do I say that? Well, you have this initial low here, right, from the initial, just the initial low. You come down to the same level, but you see how this wick actually goes through the morning, this morning, and then it actually closes pretty well, actually. That can be kind of a bear trap, right? It's kind of a wick off spring, or maybe more colloquially known as a bear trap. Basically, anyone who had longs, they probably had stops all below either here or there, basically the same level. And then anyone who wanted a momentum short, that's like, oh yeah, this is going to go, to zero tomorrow. Let me short it on any break. Can you see how they both of those groups, the longs who had too tight of a stop, and the shorts who were too aggressive after the move had already been mostly made, are trapped in that wick. So that creates that's kind of like the kindling for the short squeeze. Essentially, that's what I'm looking for next week is a short squeeze. So the kindling is there, and now you just need the spark. Arguably, the spark actually fired today. Now, so not only was the kindling laid, but also the spark is there. And they just have to kind of continue pouring gasoline on it for next week. But I do think you can get a bounce here. You're starting to get the first indication of a bounce here with the green arrow on the 195. And again, just this dynamic is very powerful. So I've already measured this out. I ran both the retracement here with a focus here on the 618 and also symmetry from that point to that point to that point. Connect the dots, gives you a target right there where the 100% is. So you see how the 100% overlaps with the 50, and they both overlap with the 618. That comes in, let's just call it at 444 on the SPY. So that indicates potential for about a 100-point bounce in the SPX, or a $10 bounce in the SPY. So it'll be worth your time to play it. The question is, how does it do anything more than that, right? Is this anything more than an oversold bounce? For now, I don't think it is. The risk signals that I'm seeing continue to build, but there's enough here that's been beaten down in the SPY and especially in tech that it indicates that you can get a pretty big bounce next week. So keep this level written down or write it on your charts, or just understand 444 would be the target for next week. On a oversold short squeeze bounce on a week where China is closed, and they're closed next week for Golden Week. I had gone through the charts, and actually, even though the SPY is pretty clean, I actually think most of the energy is going to be found in tech, even though that has not been the case. The reason I say that is because if we go back to one of these major risk signals that I had shown y'all 2 weeks ago, the interest rate, it did pop off pretty darn strongly, actually, which caused a lot of problems in the market because when bonds move this quickly or interest rates move up this quickly, it tends to break things. But I am looking for this to come in a little bit, maybe retest 14, which would be about 1.4 on the 10-year. And again, this is just the exact opposite of what I just showed you. So I just showed you the deeply oversold levels on the SPY and the potential for a 100-point bounce. Here you have the exact opposite. Here you have overbought levels with a potential for a pullback into rising support before it continues its uptrend. So I have been wanting to short bonds, but I don't think this is the time to do it. I actually think this is the time to, if you are aggressive, to get long bonds. Just for this pullback, which could be substantial and worth your time. But I'm kind of looking at this as a risk on signal if bonds come into that green circle that's drawn on the screen. At the end of the day, they're in motion, right? You have this weekly setup that you're contending with. So I don't think that this genie gets put back in the bottle and you take out all your support. But can you come back in and test the 21 next week? Yes. Would that be bullish for the market? Also, yes. Would tech disproportionately benefit from this dynamic if all of this happens? Also, yes. So that's bonds, and understand that that helps tech. From what I saw going into the premium video with the folks in the gold room, Google seems to be the easiest way to play it. XLC has some buy signals as a group, so XLC in general I think can be played. Anything in XLC, but by and large that's mostly Google. And you have a really proper reversal structure here. These three bars right here are a really good reversal structure. I don't think you reverse and make new highs, but can you get a pretty fat bounce here? Maybe to about 2780 to about 2800. Absolutely. Can you even test this trend line right there, which would be right around the level that I just gave you? Absolutely. You have the warning, the early buy signal here. So I do think that Google is a really interesting way to play it. Another really interesting way to play it, because it has been such a champ, is going to be Tesla again. So we mentioned Tesla last week, and Tesla continues to really trade extremely well, even though it closed red today, nominally by a quarter. This thing continues to trade extremely well, all things considered, because tech had a pretty bad week, and Tesla pretty much held like a champ. So Tesla and Google are going to be two good ways to play it going into next week. Understand that I'm looking for a short-term oversold bounce in primarily tech and in some of the high short interest stuff next week. I don't think it lasts. I think it rolls over, and I think the whole thing falls apart. But it's going to be worth your time to play it because it could be upwards of 100 S&P points. Here's the big signal that I've been pointing out to you guys, and I'll just continue to mention it until something changes or something happens. We all want it to happen immediately, but these big picture ideas can take a little bit of time. I think we're about 2 weeks away. But here's the signal on VIX. It continues to build. The indicator continues to improve. You see how the green line is above the red right there? Even though you don't have trend, right? This is not trend. But this is telling you that what's building underneath, there's energy that's building underneath, and it's all bullish energy. There's no other reason the red would be above 50 with the green above the red the whole time. So this is, think of it like a coiled rubber band or something, coiled spring. And you never know what direction it's going to fire, and certainly the squeeze is not too helpful in this situation. But the momentum indicator says that the coiled spring is bullish. The biggest signal that I continue to see on the VIX is right over here. The weekly squeeze is imminent and ready to fire in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Triple buy signal on the weekly chart. And then again, focusing on the daily this time, green is above the red. And they're both trying to get to above 50. Once that happens, this should pop off pretty strong. So going into next week, I do continue to expect, I expect going into next week, a pretty significant bounce. If you don't see that, that's actually extremely troublesome because all the framework is there for a decent bounce. Again, 100 points in the S&Ps. I expect for that to last about a week, and then I expect for all of that to have a pretty spectacular blow up the week after that. So that's what I'm looking at. Hopefully this helps orient you into next week. It's some very ugly charts out there, but if you pay attention specifically in the short term to momentum structures, which is what I always talk to you guys about, I think that'll really help. So just to make sure everybody's clear in terms of kind of the setup, the expectations, oversold bounce into next week, potential for upwards of 100 S&P points to the upside. That would smack it right into resistance. On the next sell signal, I think it becomes a short, and I think you take that short all the way through the end of the month, basically. All right, guys, that's my time. Hopefully this was helpful. Be sure to leave us a like, leave us a comment, subscribe. All of that helps us with the algorithm, and that way you don't miss out on any of our stuff. Aside from that, thanks for checking out our content, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. I'll see you next time, guys. Cheers. Hey, guys, this is Sam, and I'm the Director of Equities at Simpler Trading. I want to thank you for watching this video, and before you go somewhere else on the YouTube, I'd like to ask that you comment and like the video. It really does help us out with the algorithm and getting the message out to more folks who like to see our content. Also, be sure to click the bell notification and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss anything that comes out. If you want to watch us trade in real time using our own money, come over to simplertrading.com and learn how to sign up. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you for the next video. Cheers.